Hey guys, it's Kevin Aisha with the Marriage and Real Estate Podcast. We are happy to be back.
Good afternoon. I'm hype. Are you hype? No,
Yes.
You're not hype.
Yes, I am hype. You see my hypeness?
I don't see your hypeness at all.
Well, keep going. It'll get hyper.
So, welcome back. This week I wanted to talk about a really cool YouTube video that I saw about redlining and Black wealth in Black community. I thought you'd be interested in it, so I wanted to tell a quick story, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, let's hear it.
So in this YouTube video, Cory Booker was talking about when his father went to buy them a house in a neighborhood in, I guess, New Jersey or whatever. And it was a all-white neighborhood. Every house that they looked at in this neighborhood, this is right when the height of redlining was happening, they would tell them, oh, it was either sold or it wasn't available, some kind of reason. So what they did is set up a sting operation with a civil rights organization and send in a white couple to put a bid on the house.
Same house.
The bid was accepted. And when they got to the closing table, the white couple didn't show up. Cory Booker's dad showed up with his attorney. White couple, real estate agent, so pissed, he punched the Cory Booker's dad's attorney. And it was like, it became a big, they had a dog at the title company. They sicked the dog on Cory Booker's dad. It was like a whole thing.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. Well, they ended up buying that house anyway. And he said that house was a foundation of wealth for the family, right? So the YouTube video that I was watching was talking about how through the pandemic, what we've lost, or through 2008 and then now in the pandemic, how much Black wealth was lost. And the majority of that Black wealth in 2008 was lost through real estate. So in the houses that were foreclosed on and things like that, we lost 53% of our wealth as a community. And the majority of that was because even with Black couples with 800 credit score, they were still put in subprime loans and bad products and things like that. So what I wanted to talk about this week is the impact of home ownership in wealth building as a cornerstone, and then also the kind of future aspects of that. So the legacy, like what you pass down to your kids and the impact that it can have.
Okay.
Cool. So I wanted to give my feedback on that story and just tell you, and I know we haven't had this conversation, so we're kind of having it live on the podcast.
It is.
But when I watched that story, it made me think of my grandfather buying a house in Riverside Terrace. And when he was one of the first Blacks in Riverside Terrace to buy a house, and they actually firebombed our living room when he first bought a house. But that house now, which we no longer own that house, we own the house next door because my mom bought it. But when he bought that house, I want to say it was like $15,000, right? Something like that. And that property now is worth in excess of $500,000.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about how much wealth is transferred in just that single transaction, and I think about our portfolio, right? In the majority of our wealth, of course, we're in real estate, is held in real estate. That's a direct correlation to what we're passing down to our children through the properties that we own. And that's a blessing and a benefit, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your feedback on that story and then kind of elaborate on the conversation.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, check in, Aisha. So, because I guess I am a little drab today. No, I mean, we know and have heard these kinds of stories before, and it's true. The one thing that it makes me think about is protecting those assets, right? Because what we see is the parents of old, our grandparents and our great-grandparents that have passed down properties, and they get lost because people don't know what to do with them. And so, or our families don't know what to do with them, right? And so how do we protect our assets so that it can't be messed up, right? So that it can't be sold. I had a family telling me about a property that they have. One of the parents died or grandparents died, and then now it has 4 heirs. Well, one of the heirs has a tax lien, and so it's interfering with the sale of this property because they are one of the heirs to this property. So it's just how do we protect ourselves against that, and how do we make sure that we have the right safeguards in place so that we don't have those kinds of issues down the line.
I think we have to be intentional. It's interesting because even today I had to do that research on the ranch land in Hallettsville, where my family's from. Well, that going down that wormhole was interesting because it's very much exactly the same situation that you're talking about with the property, right? One property has no heirs, and then the other property has several heirs. The interesting part is this property is 21 acres inside of an 80-acre parcel. This 80-acre parcel, 75% of it is owned by another family, a white family, right? So this white family, he has one heir and several grandchildren. He just passed away, but he owns not only 75% of this parcel, but probably another 40 parcels across this county, which is very interesting. So you see the difference right now. Here I am trying to piece together in part basically 24% of this property, right, when just a part of his estate is 75% of this whole kind of property that I'm looking at. And it's the difference between a black household and a white household, but it's also the difference between protections, because what his heirs did was immediately set up a ranch company for the estate that now services all the properties, versus ours, it's just somebody paying the taxes and we don't even know where it is. You know what I mean? So I think being intentional, like we always talk about with our CPA, is setting up trust, setting up different systems that would trigger upon death in order to protect the future heirship of the property.
Yeah. And I mean, you're talking about the land that's in Hallettsville. My family has property out in Louisiana that is heavily wooded. I don't even know how many acres. I have to call my dad and ask him how many acres it is, but it's all of his cousins and himself like piecing together the money to keep the taxes paid on this land. There's so much, I want to say wood, like trees, and there's a guy who goes and he cuts the trees down and he makes money off of it, but it's
timber company.
It's all like, there's no contracts. There's nothing in place to protect this from not happening, but it is happening, and nobody's there to say like, hey, no, stop, wait, and they don't have the sophistication to, I don't know,
do something
about it, right?
Maybe we should do something about it. I think we've talked about that.
We have talked about it. The thing about it is, it's like, it's a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of work, and it's not close. Like, you have to drive to Louisiana to get to the land to even know or understand.
And invest a lot of money in fencing and control,
money,
cutting.
Time, and then who's responsible fiscally, you know? Because that's the other thing that I've seen with heirs before, is that because the person who does have the money, so right, you have these several heirs that own this property, there's usually like one person who does have the financial ability to make a difference in this land, but it's like, why would I do that when y'all haven't put anything in, or y'all equally benefit? I put more in and everybody else pulls out the same amount. You know what I mean?
And that happens all the time.
It happens a lot. So properties, that's why I respect wholesalers, to be quite honest. Wholesalers that like can piece all of those people together and like make all of those people come to a resolution. I'm like, you deserve whatever you make on that back end. Like, I'm clear that you worked for it, because navigating all of those people and personalities, and usually challenges that comes with families in these kind of situations, like, go get your back end money. I'm not even mad about it.
No, I mean, that's real. It's interesting because literally, even in the video that I watched, it talked about the impact of that one family member who has the economic means and how it decreases their wealth. Right? It does. So they said, if you take a white college graduate and a black college graduate, and you forecast 10 years out, and they have the same job, same income, whatever, the black college graduate's wealth will go down over time, and the white college graduate's wealth will go up over time. And the reason why is because this person is probably the first college graduate and the one who has the means. So now they have to help all their other family members, when the other white college graduate is just among his family, right? Like, his peers. These are the people that when you worked at the bank were getting the $20,000 wedding gifts, right? Their wealth increases because they're starting from a standpoint of stability versus us creating our own stability that then we have to share our stability with other people to give our family stability.
Yeah, because think about it. Like when you're the first to graduate in your family, or if there aren't very many graduates, you have your elders to take care of. When our counterparts, they have those kinds of provisions in place for the elders, right? There's financial provisions, there's housing provisions in place. But for us, it's like, okay, we got to take care of mom and dad, and which, you know, we take that burden. I mean, I don't want to call it burden. We take that on our backs because that's what we do. But comparatively speaking, it does reduce our wealth. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Same thing for like college scholarship. I mean, college attendance, right? I've had friends who, when they graduated from college, there was this nest egg waiting for them to do whatever they wanted with, right? And we graduate college and we go into debt because we need student loans to meet that. So then when you graduate college, you don't have this debt that I have. So my debt to income ratio looks different than yours. So you can go buy, even in the housing market, you know, our counterparts can go and buy $500,000 houses because with the same salary that we have, but we can't because we have this $200,000 student loan. And some people $400,000 student loans for a master's degree in, I don't know, theater arts or teaching or something.
That's true.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So we win and we spend all of this money, and I don't know what's happening in the higher education space today, but I seriously feel like that was predatory lending. Like for you to ask an 18-year-old, like, hey, your college tuition is $2,500, but we'll give you 20. How much do you want? I'm 18. I ain't never had $20,000 in my hand like that. Give me all 20 of my $1,000. And then you stuck. And the reason why I tell this story is because, was that quite my story? Not quite. Now, did I take more than I should have or needed? Absolutely. But I have friends that have done that. Like they always took the max that was offered for them. And now they are saddled with all of these student loans that is like a forever thing.
And if you have another alternative, you wouldn't do that, right? Like if you've seen $20,000 before, it's nothing to you to go, oh yeah, I don't need this. You're like,
but even that, if you had parents or the backing to be able for your college tuition to be covered and your college room and board, you know what I mean? Like the ability to eat and the ability to like work a small job so you can have money, you wouldn't need to take on 20. Like you would be like, why would I take on debt for $40,000? Like I don't have any reason to do that. But for us, we hadn't been exposed, and two, it's just. Anyways, I feel like it was such predatory lending for them to do that to an entire generation.
I think that's proven to be true. Same thing with the housing. It's funny. So Kayla got a text message this morning when I was dropping her off at school, and I think it was spam, but it was like, hey, you know, here's some information. We're having a webinar or something on scholarships. Click this link and then you can find out more about scholarships. And she's like, Dad, do you think this is spam? I said, most likely it's spam. And I said, the reality situation is you're 4 years from needing scholarships. Now, here's the interesting part and the fun part. She said, well, you know, when I'm ready for scholarships, what happens next? I said, well, the great thing is we now have a person that we're going to pay to help you find scholarships.
Yeah.
Right. But that's a new involvement, right? Like that's a new revelation. And when we were going to school or whatever, there was nobody. Not only did we not have the money to pay anybody to help us find scholarships, but it wasn't even something that we knew existed. But now that we know, we're like, oh, look, we write a small check.
It existed.
No,
we
but
just didn't know about it. Yeah.
So now we know, okay, I'm going to write a $1,200 check or whatever, and this girl going to help me find scholarships and help our children find scholarships. So you don't have to worry about the timing of that because somebody's going to walk you through that process.
Yeah.
So that's a change, you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the next step. And the follow-up video that I watched talked about what are the next steps to fixing this, and not necessarily fixing it because you can't overcome it overnight, but how do you start being intentional and setting the things in place from a wealth standpoint? So I definitely think it's conversations, and I definitely think it's exposure to things like that. And it's your network for sure, but it's also being very intentional about what you want for your life and what you don't want for your life. You don't want saddled student loan debt. So how do you overcome that? How do you figure that out, right?
Yeah.
You want to maximize the wealth creation with housing. So how do you do that, right? Like, how do you do these things that ultimately help you? And even if you only take it as far as making sure that your kids are good to go to college and you have a good retirement fund, there's still steps to be intentional about it.
Yeah. What did they say about, and I think we talked about this before, how hard work skips a generation? Was it you who told the story? So, you work hard, then your kids don't, right? And then their kids work hard, and it just kind of jumps back and forth.
What they talked about was, so the generation before our generation, the access to information and opportunities they had was extremely limited.
Yeah.
Right. So our parents' generation, the kind of boomers generation, they had a little bit more access, but what happened is they got real comfortable. So they said, hey, stick in this corporate ladder, you climb, you work a good job, you retire, whatever. And what happened in our generation is we had enough privilege to not have to do that. Right. So we could take a little bit more risk and go into business and things like that. Yeah. But what happens to the next generation after us is privilege, right? So privilege sets in. So what we have to combat against is you have that very hardworking generation. The generation's kind of on their coattails, so they don't have to work as hard. That skip a generation, so that next generation that is taking those chances is working really, really hard to create all this privilege for our kids.
Right.
And then our kids, now being beneficiaries of all this privilege, really don't have to work hard, so they squander it all and you start over.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Right.
Right. So the goal is, how do you be intentional about not only your wealth creation, but your wealth protection to make sure that your family's still good, even if you have some heirs that ultimately ain't going to do nothing. So it's interesting.
I mean, there's people in play. There's people for that too. Right. Mm-hmm. Because it's not like just our problem. It's not just a us problem. I think across the board, cultures have that issue.
Sure.
Too. I'm thinking in my head and I'm scanning through the cultures.
But wealth begets wealth. So one of the things that they said is if you're raised in a culture that has money, you'll naturally make more money because you're exposed to money.
That's true.
Wealth begets wealth. So your kids almost don't have to do as much because they're naturally going to inherit the benefit of the wealth creation that the generations before put all that effort into.
But here's the thing. If wealth begets wealth, then poverty begets
poverty.
And so that's
true story.
I mean, that's one of those ones where you need to change your what is it called? Break the generational curse. Change the generational curse, the generational poverty, or whatever, to make that a thing. So that's really interesting. You'll have to send me that video. I've never seen it.
I would definitely do that. I definitely
Maybe we could put the link to the video in
yes, we will do that
in our bio for this episode.
No, and definitely something I want to talk more about. I know that we're really excited about creating our first marriage and real estate event. So one of the things that we're going to be doing and rolling out in the next couple of weeks is information on those first events. And with that, we'll continue these conversations.
I like that.
Awesome. Well, this is another week. We'll put the links to all the videos. Please follow us on all your socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, subscribe, click like, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. I've never said that before.
Somebody's been watching
I see that all the time.
YouTube.
I see people say that all the time. Smash that like button, smash the subscribe button. So smash those things. I don't know why you have to smash them. I don't know what to think.
Make it stop, somebody.
Well, this is Marriage and Real Estate Podcast. We out.